Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of Answers with Pastor Will. Now, my name is Pastor Will Cole, and I am the pastor at St. Matthew Lutheran Church in Millerstown, Pennsylvania, and we're affiliated with the Association of Free Lutheran Congregations. All right, so today's question: how do you explain dinosaurs, and do you see them in the Bible? All right, now this is a very interesting one, and I think it's a question that can trip up many people, in terms of scripture. So the question is, let me start with this, I should say. Do we know when God created dinosaurs? Now, some folks are going to say, well, no, we don't. The Bible doesn't say. Yes, it does. Right? So your aquatic dinosaurs and your flying dinosaurs, like your pterodactyls, they were created on day 5 when God created the fish and the birds. Pretty much anything that flew or swam. All right, and then the land dinosaurs, God would have created on day 6. Now, with this, I also believe that dinosaurs were on the ark. Now it's like, how could that be? They're so big, there's no way they could fit on the ark. Did they put a hole in the ceiling so they could stick their heads out? It's like, not at all. If you've seen, some fossilized dinosaur eggs, the largest one was about the size of a football, which means that the dinosaurs, no matter how big they got, started out very small. And of course, reptiles or lizards, they grow as long as they live. So it could be that, the big ones just lived a really long time. Not to mention the environment would have been a lot different than it is today, especially with the hydrosphere, the layer of water, that Moses talks about in Genesis 1, and the birds flew in between. And so, like, if that layer of water was ice, for example, it would have blocked out the UV rays, it would have increased the oxygen level, and doubled the air pressure. So essentially, everyone would be living in a hyperbaric chamber. And so, that could explain somewhat as to why all the animals, people, plants, all that got so big, at least before the flood. All right. So, how do you fit dinosaurs in the Bible? Answer, you don't. You won't find the word dinosaur in the Bible. But do you know why that is? It's not because they're not there. It's because the word dinosaur was invented in the year 1842 by an anatomist named Sir Richard Owen. He derived it from 2 Greek words, dinos, meaning terrible, and sauros, meaning lizard. All right, so he saw this fossil of a dinosaur, had no idea what it was, which is interesting in itself, and just called it dinosaur. Now, just because the word dinosaur is not in the Bible doesn't mean that they didn't exist. And I think that there is actually another word that was common and used all the time. And that would be the word dragon. Have you ever noticed how similar dragons and dinosaurs look? And I think there's a good reason for that. I would argue that dinosaurs and dragons are the same thing. All right. And now we do have the word dragon in the Bible. A lot of times it's referencing Satan, but there are some here. Sometimes the word's translated into jackals, but yeah, we have the word dragon in the Bible here. And we also have 2 other animals that are named, and you find these in Job, chapters 40 and 41. All right, now the first one is Behemoth. Now listen to how Job is describing this behemoth. All right, this is Job chapter 40, starting with verse 15. Behold, behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. All right, so let's stop there for a second. Now, in like the NIV translation, for example, you'll see a footnote, right? And they'll try to say that it's either a hippopotamus or an elephant. Now, in the ESV, they're a little better. They say a large animal, exact identity unknown. All right, now, so far with what we read there, yeah, it could be an elephant or a hippopotamus, but let's continue here. Verse 17. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs are bars of iron. All right. Now, I don't know if anyone out there has ever taken the time, maybe you go to the zoo, to stare at an elephant's butt. Oh, this is my son Martin, by the way. He's off from school here and wanted to join me for this video. But anyway, has anyone ever taken the time to stare at an elephant's butt or a rhino's butt? You see the tail? I mean, the tail's like a dinky little thing there. Does that ever remind you of a cedar tree? Certainly doesn't to me, but there is another animal that it does remind me of. A long-necked plant-eating dinosaur, for example. It's maybe something like an apatosaurus. All right, let's continue on here as we also, get to, in the environment here. He is the first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his swords. Or let him who made him bring near his sword. For the mountains yield food for him, where all the wild beasts play. Under the lotus plants he lies, and in the shelter of the reeds and in the marsh. For his shade the lotus trees cover him. The willows of the brook surround him. Behold, if the river is turbulent, he is not frightened. He is confident though Jordan rushes against his mouth. Can one take him by his eyes or pierce him with a snare? So he lives in the reeds, swamp, marsh, that kind of thing. And I believe a lot of scientists also would agree that something like an apatosaurus did at one time live in, like swamp areas. At least that's what the evidence that we find in the present would suggest. All right, so here I think one can make a clear case for behemoth being something like an apatosaurus. All right, but you have some evolutionists out there, those that believe that, dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, which remember, nobody was there. So there's no way it could be, and they still stick with the elephant claim or the hippopotamus claim. Or some will say that it's a mythical creature because they don't want to see the evidence right at hand. Now, and I'll talk a little bit more about, some other evidence that we have. But first, let's go on to Leviticus. We're going to be talking about Leviathan from Job 41. All right, so can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many pleas with you? Will he speak to you soft words? Will he make a covenant with you to take him for your servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird, or will you put him on a leash for your girls? Will traders bargain over him? Will they divide him among his merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Now, some will try to say that, this is a crocodile here. But honestly, there's been some crazy folks that have gone fishing for crocodiles. To me, this does not make sense, although I do admit that you wouldn't catch a crocodile using a hook. However, there is more to it here. And then, of course, some who say, well, there's no way this could be a crocodile, but yet they believe in evolution. And so they'll say, this is just a mythical creature. It's like, no. All right, so let's continue here. Lay your hands on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. Behold, the hope of a man is false. He has laid low even at the sight of him. No one is so fierce that he dares to stir him up. Who then is he who could stand before me? Who has first given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heavens is mine. All right, let's go, because there's a lot of poetry here a little bit as well. But again, we're talking about like a thick hide in verse 13. Who can strip off his outer garment, or who would come near him with a bridle? All right. Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth is terror. His back is made up of rows of shields, shut up closely as with a seal. All right. Oh, here is an interesting thing, and it makes a point, and we could talk about this a little bit. All right. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like eyelids of the dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches, and sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils comes forth smoke as from a boiling pot, and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame comes forth from his mouth. In his neck abides strength, and terror dances before him. The folds of his flesh stick together, firmly cast on him, and immovable. So, if you notice here, Leviathan blew fire. You're saying, Pastor Will, how is this possible? Certainly there's nothing out there, no animal, that can blow fire. All right. Well, let's talk about that too. First of all, I'm thinking Leviathan was some sort of an aquatic dinosaur. All right. Maybe a plesiosaurus, a crowdosaurus, mosasaur, whatever. It was something like that. And it had the ability to blow fire. How is that possible? Well, have you ever heard of the bombardier beetle? See, one thing we need to realize is God is an awesome chemist, right? So a bombardier beetle is a beetle that shoots a liquid out that if it touches you, it will burn you. So how does that work? Well, you have chemical A and chemical B, right? And if you put them together, there's a chemical reaction. So you have chemical A, chemical B, an inhibitor so it doesn't blow itself up, and then a catalyst to get the reaction going. And so this bombardier beetle would actually shoot out this liquid that will burn you. It's a chemical reaction. Now, I hypothesize, because again, we can't prove this because we weren't there, that these dinosaurs, at least some of them, they had chemical A and chemical B, that if you combine them together, they would spontaneously combust. You had an inhibitor there, so it didn't blow itself up, and a catalyst to get the reaction going. Now, if this is the case, these dinosaurs, like Leviathan, would shoot out this liquid that would spontaneously combust, and it would appear that fire is coming from his mouth. All right. And I mean, haven't you ever been curious about these legends about fire breathing dragons? Could it be possible that some of the land dinosaurs might have had this ability? At least some of them. I mean, it's something that I don't think you would find in the fossil record. All right. So, I think we've established here fairly well dinosaurs in the Bible and how they, and when they were created, they were on the ark and all that stuff. But I'm sure folks would like some more evidence, right? I mean, so what happened to the dinosaurs? Well, most of them died. After all, remember, the one thing that a fossil could tell you is that it's dead. The dinosaurs died, but things die and go extinct all the time. Now, personally, we know the flood killed a bunch of them, right? But, Job and, these other places obviously were after the flood. All right. And then, of course, you have these legends of fire-breathing dragons. And there's been some other sightings as well. In the Congo, I think that's in Africa there, the natives call it Mokele and Bembe. What they're describing is like a long-necked plant-eating dinosaur, like an Apatosaurus, about the size of a giraffe today. Vegetarian, lives in the swamp. Certainly would fall in the characteristics of behemoth there. All right, it won't eat you, but it has no problem killing you. I mean, it's a big thing. Now, there was a story that, the natives killed one, ate it, and got food poisoning. Whether there was some sort of poison in there or the meat just went bad, I don't know. Either way, I'm pretty sure it tasted like chicken. All right, there have been sightings of pterodactyls in New Guinea, and according to the natives there, they glow in the dark, which I suppose it's possible. Again, something that the fossil record won't tell you. All right, and I believe that there have been some sightings of pterodactyls also in the Amazon. And then something a little tougher to prove, some in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm not so sure about that one, in the remote areas. But, hey, it's remote enough. Perhaps there are a few. I don't know. Thunderbird was a pterodactyl. Got hit by lightning. The Indians called it Thunderbird, which means that there were pterodactyls in the desert up to like 150, 200 years ago. Now, personally, I think man killed most of them. But you have plenty of cave drawings, I can speak, right, that have pictures of dinosaurs on them, mostly long-necked plant-eating dinosaurs. The Inca stones is another one. They have pictures of every known dinosaur on these Inca stones, and evidently they use some of them for beasts of burden. What about Komodo dragon? I would think that would qualify. And then I saw on one of these arches, it was in a documentary on History Channel. They deny it, but, it looks like there's a stegosaurus on one of them with other animals. So, what happened to most of the dinosaurs? They died. I believe that man probably killed a bunch of them, but, species go extinct all the time. So I don't think that's anything to write home about. But I believe that dinosaurs were always with man. Dinosaur Park in Texas. If you're ever driving through Texas, you want to stop and see Dinosaur Park because there is nothing pretty much after that. All right, you have human footprints, and then you have dinosaur footprints over the human footprints in the layers of the soil there. So what does that tell you? It says that the humans were at that spot first. But if we're looking at the evidence through our biblical glasses, we could easily see how this could be possible. Because dinosaurs were created on days 5 and 6. They've been around with man. Somehow they died. But we do see and hear things, throughout history, So I think that is completely possible. All right. So if you are in the area, we welcome you to come and worship with us. St. Matthew Lutheran Church, 600 Centerville Road, Millerstown, Pennsylvania, 17062. We have our Sunday school and adult Bible class at 9 a.m., worship at 10 a.m. Our website, stmatthewpa.org. That's stmatthewpa.org. All right, we'll see you next time. God's blessings.